Hello everybody, my name is Chastity and welcome to my channel. This isn't a normal video that I would normally do. As you can see today, I am putting out an audiobook with the whole story, and the whole story takes about 2 hours to tell. I just wanted to make a few things very clear before we get into this story. So, the first thing I want to let you know is that this video is a sister video to my read-along series where I read novels that I wrote as a teen and I react to the novels because it's so cringy. I'm putting out this whole story for those who are just too impatient to wait every couple of weeks for the reaction videos to come out. So this is for everyone who just wants to hear it all in one. I say think of this video as a movie and my reaction video as a director's cut. In fact, I'm thinking about changing the name of my reaction videos to the director's cut, but we'll see. Secondly, I wrote this story, student life, when I was very young, 13 or 14. I was inspired by the Lifetime movie Letourneau, an All-American Girl, which is based off a real life story that happened where a teenager who's like 13 and his teacher had intercourse and a relationship and they got married. So naturally 13-year-old me was trying to be very innovative, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna just turn this whole thing on its head. What if it was this with more diversity? So yeah, I Student Life is a romanticizing version of this story. Point 3. Teenage me glorifies this very inappropriate relationship between James Pygmy and Dolores Knight. Pygmy being the teacher and Knight being the student. After multiple readings of the story, I realized that I wrote a horror story rather than a romance. That's because in this story, James Pygmy gaslights and he is grooming Dolores, and it's very scary and kind of strange that I was able to write a story where in my mind it was utter romance, but from the outside looking in it was like a horror story. This girl does not even know she's being victimized, so it was a very scary thing for me to realize. And like, I low-key want to rewrite it now to be more ominous. Is that the word? Yeah, I'm going with it. But I was like, oh my god. So it kind of freaked me out. It's kind of cringy. And it was very scary. But it boggles my mind that I wrote this as a young kid without knowing what gaslighting was, without knowing what grooming was. I didn't do any research for this. I just wrote out of, no knowledge. And it's just so interesting that this is what I thought was romance. And then to look at it 15 years later and I'm like, no, honey, this is predator. So, it just enlightens me to how like teenagers really thought. Because I like to think that when I was a teenager, I didn't think like this. But I did. Point number 4 is that I want to apologize in advance for what might be considered homophobia. I'm not completely sure. There is a very flamboyant gay black teen named Junior who is very promiscuous. And I based this character off of Jack McFarlane from Will and Grace. So really, I wanted a just Jack in my story. And, back then everybody had a gay best friend. So, why not have Dolores have a gay best friend? Which really is not really Dolores's gay best friend when I think about it. It's really Dahlia's gay best friend. I digress. Anyway, and point 5 is the writing is horrible. I know this. It's cringy. And that's why I'm reading it, because it is so cringy and it's so disturbingly bad writing. And throughout this video, I will giggle at some points because it's really funny to me. And sometimes I'm nervous at the fact that I wrote this. Also, I stumble a lot sometimes in this video. Like, I'll be like, nope, wait. And I don't edit it out because, let's face it, this is not a professional recording of a book. So I do not want you guys to expect professionalism. Also, we got visited by Petey, I think once or twice, where he was like, hey, I'm going to jump on this table and rock the mic. And boy, did he rock the mic. I'm just saying this to say, don't expect professionalism and stuff, because it's not going to be professional. And finally, this should go without saying, but I'll say it anyway. This story is completely fabricated, completely made up. Never in my life have I ever had a teacher as fine as James Pigmy. Never. Not even in college have I had an attractive teacher. Student life is not based on anyone that I know. It's not based on any events from my hometown. It is not secretly me telling my truth or anything like that. And it's not me secretly telling someone else's truth in a story. This is just something I copied as a teen and then I romanticized like a... Yeah, I'm not going to curse right now. All I'm saying is, like, this definitely, to my knowledge, did not happen in my little hometown. So if anyone from my little hometown tries to be like, oh my gosh, she has to be writing about this, I know nothing. And if anything pops up about something like this happening in my hometown, I knew nothing about it. And I'm low-key a little pissed that no one told me. Just saying. I like to sip tea and hear gossip too. So with that being said, I would like to thank you guys for sitting through this nearly 10-minute intro. I hope you guys enjoyed this cringy story with me, and I hope to see you on the director's cut and get a deeper insight to why I wrote the way I did and what I was trying to prove. I just want you guys to have a good time, and I will see you around on my channel. Why am I waving like y'all can see me? All right. Welcome to the recording of Student Life by Teenage Me. Read to you by Chastity G. Yeah, that rhymes. Student Life. Warning. This book contains strong language. You have been warned. Chapter 1. Her skin was the color of toasted almonds, as CoverGirl would have called it. Her black hair was naturally shoulder in length. However, today it was long and straight, with a hint of gold in it to match the flakes in her big brown eyes. She was short for her age, 17 and only 5'1". She blames it on her mom, who is also short. But at last, she was okay with her height, because her body made up for it. She had curves in all the right places and beautiful, soft, brownish pink lips. Her name was Dolores Knight, and this is her story. Dolores' eyes watered as she laughed at the movie. "Doe, this is a good one," whispered Jessica, a tall girl with blonde hair, blue eyes, and a bright smile. "Yeah," Dolores whispered back as the laughter died down. A man ahead of Dolores sighed loudly, as if he was annoyed. Dolores ignored this, even though he had already irritated her by hitting her feet with the back of his chair. The man leaned over to the woman next to him. "I wish someone would stop kicking the back of my chair," he said loudly. The woman laughed nastily. "Yeah, this little bitch has been kicking mine too." Dolores looked at Jessica. holding completely still. Jessica could tell that Dolores was about to say or do something. "Doe, please don't," she whispered. Dolores crossed her arms and decided to focus on the movie. After about 5 minutes, the man turned around sharply. "Stop kicking my chair, you little fucker," he said loudly. "If you would sit your fat ass up, your chair would stop hitting my foot," Dolores snapped back. The woman turned around then. "You've been kicking his chair all night, and this little bitch has been kicking mine." Jessica, who hated conflict, started breathing hard. Dolores took a deep breath. "Look here. You guys are leaning so far back that your chairs are hitting our feet. And whenever we move, you feel it. And I'm not going to sit here and be completely still like stone so you can lean your asses back," she said calmly as she could. The woman sucked her teeth. "Kick my chair one more again," she warned. "What the fuck ever," Dolores said loudly. Not even 2 minutes later, the woman stood up. "I can't take it anymore. I hope you enjoy the fucking movie," she said. Dolores looked at her. "I will now that you're leaving." By now, Jessica's inhaler was in her hand. The woman took a large cup of soda and poured it all over Dolores. She was ready for this. Dolores took her cup and tossed it on the woman. "Hey, watch it. I got a very expensive camera over here," one boy said as Dolores and Jessica stood up. The woman took a swing at Dolores and hit her. That was all she needed. Dolores lunged over the seat and started punching the woman everywhere she could reach. "Damn, this is better than the movie. This is going to be a YouTube hit," said the boy, turning the bright light on his camera and started recording. By now, everyone was trying to see the fight. Some were even standing on their chairs to get a better look. The man pulled Dolores off the woman and held her. "I got her, Amy. Take a hit," he said, laughing. The woman, Amy, had a load of blood coming from her nose. She punched Dolores in the stomach and then backhanded her across the face. "My pimp hand is still strong, Jake," Amy said. She went for another hit when Jessica grabbed Amy's hair and pulled her to the floor. Dolores took this time to kick Jake's shin, then elbow him in the ribs. He doubled over. "Jess, switch with me," Dolores yelled as she punched Jake with her right hand. He fell to the floor, holding his face. Jessica stepped on his balls and twisted her foot like she was putting out a cigarette butt. Dolores turned to the woman. "Lay back down," she said, kicking Amy in the face. The house lights came on. Dolores took Amy's arm and twisted it behind her back. "Say you're sorry," Dolores yelled at her. "I'm sorry," Amy screamed in pain. Dolores twisted a little more. "Mean it." "I am so sorry," Amy cried. Dolores slammed her head down. "I know you are," Dolores said, getting up. Jake was laying on the floor, passed out from the pain Jessica had inflicted on him. "Come on, Jessica," she said. "Behind you!" Jessica cried. Dolores turned around and Amy landed a punch on her jaw. The punch was so hard that Dolores spit out blood. "Come on," Amy challenged. Dolores swung 2 times with mad speed. The guys had always said she had some dangerous hands. Amy got a black eye and a cracked jaw. She was on the floor screaming with pain. Dolores grabbed Amy by the hair. "Hit me one more again," she said. Then she tossed her aside like a rag doll. "Girl, your hand is swollen and covered in blood." Jessica grabbed a cup and drained the soda from it, leaving the ice in it. "Put your hand in this," she instructed. Dolores put her hand on the ice. "Move! Out of my way! Move!" said a voice Dolores knew all too well. Officer Brickhouse. "Not him," Dolores groaned. And the officers saw 2 adults on the floor and 2 17-year-olds in the middle of it all. "We need the paramedics in here," one of them yelled. "It doesn't surprise me that you're in the middle of all of this," Officer Brickhouse said. "Ah, doggy. Oh, doggy, no. Hello. If it makes you feel better, I didn't start it this time. Just ask the cameraman over there. I'm sure he taped it, Dolores said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Dolores and Jessica, you know the drill, Officer Brickhouse said. They turned around and put their hands behind their backs. Cuff 'em, Officer Brickhouse said in a commanding voice. Dolores rolled her eyes at Jess, who smiled. You have the right to remain silent, one of the officers said. Yeah, ouch! What are you, a rookie? Dolores asked as she was being led out. Chapter 2. Dolores, Jessica, Jake, and Amy were sitting in a courtroom. Their judge just so happened to be the one judge Dolores hated the most, Judge Kimberly Smith. Jake and Amy were suing Dolores and Jessica for $50,000 each. Jessica was taking her third puff on her inhaler as they watched the tape. The fight seemed to last a little longer than Dolores remembered. Well, this tape was quite disturbing, Judge Smith said. I hate to tell you this, Jake and Amy, but you brought this on yourself. Dolores sat up. The judge was taking her side for the first time in 3 years. How could you start a fight with kids? You used foul language, agitated them, and then turned it physical. I'm surprised Dolores controlled her temper for as long as she did. That anger management class I assigned you to last year must really work, Judge Smith said, nodding to Dolores. This truly shocked me. The $100,000 you wanted? Forget it. Amy and Jake, I order you to pay court costs and to give each of these girls a formal apology, Judge Smith said. Dolores and Jessica were sitting up and smiling hard. Remove those smiles off your face, girls. You will each get 3 months house arrest, Judge Smith said. Dolores' lawyer jumped up. Judge Smith, your judgment is honorable and completely fair. However, rather impossible for Dolores to complete. You see, Dolores is moving clear across the United States due to her father, Timothy Knight's job. It's been planned for months. She's leaving in 2 weeks. Judge Smith thought for a moment. All right. Jessica punishment remains the same. Dolores, however, will be placed in a juvenile detention center for a week and a half. Chapter 3. Dolores opened her eyes when her dad started bouncing with joy. Wake up, baby girl. We're home. Home? No. Home was in LA, in the city, Dolores thought. Not here, in the middle of nowhere. Not in Seneca, North Carolina. Dolores saw a dull 3-story house. It was white with green shutters, just like the other 3 houses around them. This house is so beautiful, her father said, getting out of the car. Come on, Doe, wake up. Dolores rolled her eyes and got out. Her dad ran to the house like a hyper child fresh off his medications. She tried not to look impressed as her father dragged her around the house. The week Dolores was in juvenile detention center, her dad came to the house and set up all the big stuff like the beds and the dressers. Now all they had to do was put the little stuff in their new respective places. Dolores had nearly put up all her clothes in her room when her dad called to her. Doe, Dolores, honey. She stuck her head out the door. Yeah? He walked up the stairs. Honey, I know we just moved here, but I have to go to a meeting. Are you going to be okay here, all by yourself? He asked. He looked around. Dad, you once left me with an old lady in 3C for a week. I think I can handle a few hours, she laughed. He kissed her on the cheek. That's my girl. Call me if you need anything. I'll pick up some food from the food line on the way back, he said. Dolores watched as her father drove off before starting to set up the living room. The first thing she did was test out the fireplace. The couches were already perfectly arranged. She rolled a soft white rug in front of the fireplace and put the family photo on the mantle. In the photo was her mother, who was pregnant, her, and Dolores. Her father and Dolores. Knock, knock, said a woman walking into the house. Dolores, who was putting up another picture, was so startled by that she fell off her chair. "Oh, dear, are you all right?" she asked, running to help her up, while an old white man stood at the door holding a cake. Yes, I'm fine," Dolores said, rubbing her leg. "Well, I'm Monica Davis, and this is my husband, Chuck. We live in the house across the street." Monica looked to be in her mid-40s, early 50s. She dyed her hair brown and had even white teeth, more likely false teeth. She seemed like the type of person who would drag her husband for an early morning walks so they could remain healthy together. Chuck was going bald and looked a little grumpy, but is hiding some kind heart somewhere. "I'm Dolores Knight," she said, shaking their hands. "We saw your husband last week moving things in, but we never got a chance to say welcome. Where is he now?" Monica asked. He's at a meeting, and I'm not his wife," Dolores said with a smile. Monica raised an eyebrow. "Oh, really?" she said. "Monica," Chuck warned. "He's my dad," Dolores explained, pointing to the family photo. Monica laughed. "Of course. So where is your mother?" Monica asked. She died giving birth to my sister Alex. And then Alex died a week after," Dolores said. "Oh, honey, I am so sorry," Monica said, rubbing her arms. "No, it's okay. It was 5 years ago," Dolores said with a little smile. "Well, here's a cake I've baked for y'all. Welcome to Seneca, home of the mighty Wildcats," Monica said, taking the cake from Chuck. "If y'all need anything, we're right across the street. Come on, Chuck, it's time for our tea," Monica said in a sing-song voice. "My wife is a basket case. You'll have to forgive her," he said. Dolores gave him a wink. "Chuck," Monica said a little more sharply. "Coming, dear," he called, and they were gone. After an hour or two, Dolores was almost done with the living room. All she had now to do was set up the new entertainment center for the TV. Just when she was about to cut a piece of cake, someone knocked on her front door. Dolores had locked it when 2 other neighbors walked in, bringing them a welcome gift of red wine. She looked through the peephole. There was this white man with brown hair and a great jawline at her door. She took a better look at him through the side window. He was wearing a fitted green shirt and a pair of slightly baggy blue jeans. This man was cute and had a great-looking butt. She smoothed her hair down and licked her lips before opening the door. His eyes were the first thing she saw. They were dark green with a rim of light green around them. His teeth were white and even with soft pink lips around them. "Hello," said the man, looking at her. Dolores took a split second to snap out of her daze. "Hi, come in," she said, stepping aside. "Hi, I'm James," he said, handing her a casserole dish. "Thank you. I'm Doe. Dolores Knight. Doe's my nickname," she said, setting down the dish and shaking his hand. He laughed. "So, James, do you have a last name?" she asked. "Pygmy. James Pygmy." They looked at each other for a moment. "I brought you this chicken. It's chicken. I figured that you and your husband would be hungry," he said, putting his hands in his pocket. Dolores smiled and took the dish to the kitchen to cut it. James followed her. "Do you want some?" Dolores asked. "Yeah, sure," he said. "He's my father," Dolores said, handing him a paper plate and a fork. They sat in the living room. "Your father? Oh, I'm sorry. I just assumed you were married." "It's really stupid of me," he said, sitting next to her. "No, it's okay. Everyone assumes that he was my husband. But they were all married. You, on the other hand, you don't have a ring, and you didn't come over with a lover, so I'm assuming you were trying to figure out if I was single. If you wanted to know that, all you had to do was ask," she asked. She had said, smiling. Dolores took a bite. Smart and upfront. Dangerous combination, James said. He looked at the pile of wood on the floor. What's that? It's the entertainment system. She put her plate down. Do you need help putting this up? He asked. Dolores took his empty plate. If you don't mind, she said, smiling. They worked on the center for a good hour, and now they were pulling out the DVDs to put on them. Titanic? I haven't seen this in forever, he said. It's my all-time favorite, Dolores said. So, Doe, what do you do? James asked. I'm a student. And you? She asked, taking a sip of her soda. I teach 12th grade honors English, he said. Dolores started to choke. Are you okay? James asked, patting her on the back. His hands were warm and firm. English teacher? She coughed. Yeah. Thank you, James. I mean, Mr. Pygmy, Dolores said, taking a deep breath. Please, call me James, he said, still rubbing her back. Dolores took a step away from him. I think your surname would be most appropriate because I'm going into 12th grade honors English this year, she said. You're still in high school? He asked. Dolores nodded. This has been weird, she said with a small smile. Well, it was very nice to meet you, Dolores, James said, getting up. She walked him to the front door. Yes, see you in class, Dolores said with a half smile. She closed the door. Way to go, Dow. You just flirted with your English teacher. Nice. Chapter 4. It had been 2 weeks since she moved into her new house. Her dad came home with a little cute bug for her to drive wherever. She took a few trips around the small town, getting to know the place a little bit better. She and her father had got her classes set up and met her teachers during an open house at her new school. She, of course, met James Pygmy again. Dolores had seen him quite a many times after he first came over. He likes to work out on his back porch, and Dolores spent most of her time working on her new garden, trying to make it the way her mom always wanted it. Now she was sitting in her car in the student parking lot. She watched the students walk in the main building, smiling and waving to old friends. After a moment or two, she reached into her back seat and grabbed her book bag. A boy in a blue car pulled up. He had a natural tan with black hair and red tips. His eyes were blue, and he had the body of a lean football player. The boy smiled at her with shiny white teeth. Dolores got out of her car. Hey, he said as she passed him. Hi, she answered. Are you new? He asked, catching up with her. Because I've never seen you before. Yeah, I just moved from LA, Dolores said, smiling. What brought you to Seneca? I mean, this place is like the Roach Motel. They check in, but they don't check out, he said, looking at her like she was crazy for moving here. She lifted a shoulder. My dad got a job. He's building a mall out here. They reached the building, and he held the door open for her. Oh, yeah, I heard we were getting a mall. I'm Xander Spencer, by the way, he said, holding out his hand. Dolores shook it. Dolores Knight, or Doe. The bell went off, and it made her jump. First bell. What do you got? Xander asked. Calculus, she said. Wow, a smart one. I got pre-cal second. Wood shop first for me, he said. Well, it was nice to meet you, Dolores said. Later, he said, jogging off. Math was all right, nothing great. Then history, computer, drama, lunch, and last of all, English. It turns out Xander was in her drama class. They played an introduction game and did a few acting games. Xander was her partner in the mirror game. Seniors were able to leave early for lunch. Dolores sat at a table over by the wall. She didn't like having her back towards people when she ate. When the bell rang, everyone started walking in. Dolores had no friends, and she felt like everyone's eyes were on her. She watched people laughing, calling out to one another, and just hanging out. Suddenly, Dolores felt sick. She missed Jessica and all of her other friends. She let some of her food slip off her fork. That looks amazing, Xander said, sitting next to her. Yeah, I know, right? She said, smiling. Xander pulled out a box of barbecue chicken and some ranch. Here, try this, Xander said, dipping the chicken in the ranch and holding it up to her. She shook her head. Oh, come on. It came from my mother's diner. She's the best cook in Seneca. Just take a bite. If not for me, for my mother, he said, poking out his lip. Fine, she said, taking the chicken and eating it. Good? He asked. Dolores' eyes lit up. The best, she said. Well, I got more where that come from, he said. So, what you got next, Doe? Xander asked, licking his fingers. I got Mr. Pygmy's class next, and then I go home, Dolores said, getting another piece of chicken. Me too. Hey, Mark, come here. Over here, Xander suddenly called to a boy who stood up. Mark was a tall black boy with big brown eyes and cornrows. He was sexy and he knew it. Hey, Xander, Mark said, sitting down. He reached for a chicken wing. Ah, this ain't for you, Xander said, slapping his hands away. Mark made a face and then looked at Dolores. Hello, Mark Hill, quarterback, he said, trying to be smooth, and he was. He kissed her hand. Dolores Knight, new girl, she said, taking her hand away from him. A Hispanic girl hit Mark in the back of the head with a book. Mark, what are you doing? I let you out of my sight for 1 second and you're already hitting on the new girl, she said, sitting down. She said something else in Spanish and crossed her arms. English. I speak English, Mark said. Doe, this is Dahlia. Dahlia, Doe, Xander said. Don't mind them. They're always fighting, he whispered. Hi, Doe. I'm not mad at you. He hits on anything in a skirt, she said. Dahlia was tall and beautiful. She had long, black, curly hair and dark eyes. Her body was in very good shape. Her makeup was flawless. Her teeth were white and even. How in the world does everyone have nearly perfect teeth? Dahlia had a ton of rings and gold bangles. Dolores nodded. So, are you both seniors too? She asked. Yeah, Mark answered. Dahlia leaned in. The whole school is talking about you. Lacey is telling the whole school that you have a 23-page rap sheet. But I know that's not true. My dad's the sheriff here, Dahlia said, smiling. That's the last time I let Lacey spend the night over. She can't hold water. See, I was having a sleepover a few weeks ago with Junior, Lacey, Kim, and Nikki, and we were going downstairs when we heard my dad talking about you to my mom. He only got to your rap sheet when one of us sneezed and we ran back to my room. Dolores just looked at her. Dahlia leaned in, resting her head on her hands. Dolores noticed how her eyes glittered with curiosity. So, what did you do? Fight? Drugs? Sell your body? She asked. Dolores gave her a look that told her to back off. Dahlia sat back, knowing that she went a little too far. So she decided to change the subject. Is it true that your dad is building a mall down here? She asked with excitement. Well, he's head contractor, Dolores said. And I heard that you had all advanced classes, so you're really smart, Dahlia pressed. I just pay attention in class, Dolores said, taking a sip of soda. So you got Pygmy next then, huh? Mark asked. Yeah, it's crazy. I live right next door to him, Dolores said. Dahlia's eyes lit up. The bell rang. Doe, walk with me, Dahlia said. So you live next to the sexiest man in Seneca? I hate you, she said, pulling Dolores into the bathroom. Does he work out outside? She asked as she fixed her makeup. I've seen him do a pull-up or two, she said, smiling. With his shirt off? Dahlia asked. And he was sweating, Dolores added. Oh, God, I hate you. I've been lusting after this man ever since I came to this high school. I even worked extra hard just to get into his class, she said, sighing. Dolores laughed as they walked to class. Dolores smiled at James as she sat down next to Dahlia. The late bell rang. Afternoon. For those who don't know me, I'm James Pygmy, he said. I'm going to take Ro and then we can get started. As he called Ro, the door slowly opened. A tall, thin black boy with tight gold pants and black tank top walked in. He had long black hair and some high heels on. This boy made a prettier girl than half the girls in the class. "Junior, why are you late?" James asked, not looking up. Junior put his hand on his hips. He was clearly gay and proud of it. "I had to use the bathroom," he said. Junior's voice confused Dolores. If she would have only heard his voice, she wouldn't be able to tell if he was a girl or a boy. Truthfully, she really still couldn't tell. James looked at him. "I got held up," Junior said, poking out his lip. "Take a seat, Junior. I won't count you late for the first day," James said. "Oh my God, thank you, Mr. P," Junior said, walking back to the door. "Junior, where are you going?" James asked. "Well, I gotta get my book bag. I left it in the hall," he said. "Why?" James asked. Junior smiled. "'Cause I have a bunch of keychains on it, and it would have made a lot of noise when I was trying to sneak in. Duh." James shook his head as Junior twisted his way back to the class and then parked next to Dolores. Dahlia leaned across her. "Junior, where were you?" she whispered. "Girl, you know I had to go get me some," Junior said, poking out his lip and fixing his hair. Mark and Xander made gagging faces. "From who?" Dahlia asked. "Girl, I can't tell you. He's a DL brother," Junior said, looking at Dolores. "Oh my God, who is you?" "You are so beautiful," he said, touching her hair. Dolores leaned back. "Thanks," she said slowly. Junior crossed his legs. "If I was born a girl, I would want to look like you." "What's your name?" he asked. "Doe," she said, smiling. Junior took her hand. "So soft," he said. "Junior, don't scare her off," Dahlia said. "You three, eyes, ears, up here," James said. "Sorry," Dolores and Dahlia said. "I'll keep my eyes on you all right," Junior said under his breath. "Welcome to Honors English. In this class, we will be doing a lot of writing, journal mainly." James held up a black and white composition book. "In this class, we will learn more about ourselves," he said, passing out the notebooks. "Your journals are completely private. No one will read them, not even me if you don't want me to. Just write, 'Do not read,' across the top of the page. I will, however, check dates and make sure that each journal entry is a page or more long. You have to write an entry in at least 3 times a week. And the best part is you'll never know when I'll take them up." He smiled at his class. "The first thing you'll write in your journal is an introduction about yourself. That's the only thing I have to read. And I look forward to it," James said, leaning against his desk. Dolores couldn't help but notice how handsome he looked in baby blue. She looked around. All the other girls and Junior had this goofy look on their face. Well, at least I'm not alone, Dolores thought. Chapter 5. Dolores sat on her bed. After her English class, Dahlia and Junior invited her to go to a diner called Nikki's. It turned out to be the same diner Xander's mother owned. Dahlia and Junior gave her the 411 on everybody worthy of talking about at the school. Who was dating who, biggest whore, richest, emos, and the gays. Then there's the DL list, Junior had said. The names that I'm about to tell you I have played with throughout the last few years, Junior said. Dolores pulled out her homework. She didn't have much, seeing how it was only the first day. She pulled out her notebook. What to write? She asked herself aloud. My name is Dolores Knight. I'm 17 years old. December I'll be 18. And I live next to my English teacher, Mr. James Pigmy. Well, you're Mr. Pigmy. This is strange. I don't know if I should introduce myself to you or to the book. I'm just going to write to you. It's easier this way. It was nice of you to help me when I moved in. It would have taken me forever to set up that entertainment center. I guess I should talk about myself. My mom died 5 years ago, giving birth to my sister Alex. She died soon after. I miss them a lot, all the time. Before I moved here, I got put in jail for fighting, but it wasn't my fault. I've been in and out of jail for years. My dad moved me down here for 2 reasons. 1, it's the best offer he's ever had. And 2, it was to get me out of a place where he hoped I'd calm down and behave myself. I've made some good friends. Dahlia, Junior, Mark, and Xander. They're really cool. Junior is a bit of a whore. Like, really, he told me who he has been with. And Dahlia and Mark dates. They're cute. Xander, I don't really know what to think about Xander. He's really cute. And his mama's Nikki makes the best chicken wings. As for my teachers, they're all cool, but they're not as... But you're the coolest. By the way, I still have your casserole dish. If you were wondering where it was, just to let you know, Mr. James or Mr. Pygmy, I strive to write the truth and hide nothing. Don't be surprised by what you might read. I hold nothing back. Doe. Chapter 6. I can't do it, Dahlia said, standing in the middle of Dolores' room. Junior and Dolores were sitting on her bed. Dahlia, you're a cheerleader. You're supposed to work on this over the summer, Junior said. I did work on it. Mark helped me, Dahlia said, giving a naughty smile. Ew, you nasty, Junior said, crossing his legs. Dolores got up and stood next to her. Look, I'll do it with you, she said, falling into a split. Whoa, baby, Junior said. I didn't know you could do a split. Where'd you learn to do that? Dahlia asked. Well, the 3rd time I got into trouble, my dad decided I needed to do something constructive. He told me I had the choice between ballroom dancing or gymnastics, Dolores said, getting up. So you can do like backflips and all that crazy stuff? Junior asked, trying his own split. I'm stuck, Junior said, holding up his hands. Yeah, you should have seen the face of the cops that tried to catch me, Dolores said, helping him up. You should join the squad, Dahlia said. I've never cheered before, she said. That does not even matter. We'll teach you. We have practice today. Come on. Just show Miss Terry what you can do, Dahlia pleaded. Yeah, the more the merrier. Plus, you're probably better, Junior said, smiling. Dolores had on shorts and a white tee. I can't believe she talked me into doing this, Dolores thought, trying not to roll her eyes. Miss Terry, this is Dolores, Dahlia said. Hi, Miss Terry said, shaking Doe's hand. Miss Terry, Dolores is a gymnast, Junior said. Have you ever cheered before? Miss Terry asked. No, I'm only here because she talked me into it. Dolores held up a CD. Track 2? She said without smiling. Dolores pulled out all the stops. She did every flip she ever learned along with a simple dance moves. After her dance, Terry was smiling big and was clapping. Wow, you are amazing, she said. Did I make it? Dolores asked with her hands on her hips. Oh yeah, Miss Terry introduced Dolores to the squad. And for the next month, Dolores learned some cheers and do all sorts of stunts. Dolores easily became one of the best cheerleaders on the team. Her father was particularly pleased that she was on the team. Now you'll have something to do besides school, he said over dinner one night. She told him that she had joined. Enter Journal. Hi, Mr. P. I told my dad that I'm on the cheerleading team today. He was completely freaking out when he couldn't find me about 3 hours ago. I swear, I run away once in my life and he thinks I'm gonna split again. It was strange because I've been on the team for about a month and he didn't know. And he was all excited. He was a little upset that I didn't tell him sooner. I told him that if he was home more, maybe I would have told him sooner. We just haven't seen eye to eye in the last few months. Junior was painting a paw print on Dahlia's face. Doe, baby, your turn, he said. I'm nervous. I hate halftime shows, Dolores said, sitting down. She felt the cold paint on her face. Don't be. You're going to have so much fun. Just imagine Xander will be here watching you cheer for him, Junior said, pulling away the stencil and fanning her face. Oh, whatever, Dolores said, smiling. Over the last month, Dolores had been at school and she and Xander had become close. Sometimes he would pick her up and take her to school. They often went shopping for things like shoes or walking around the Walmart. The night before Dolores and Xander went to the movies, I had fun, Dolores had said, sitting in the car. Me too, Xander had said. They sat for a moment. Well, I'll see you tomorrow, Xander had grabbed her arm. Doe turned and Xander leaned over and kissed her. It was the most heart-wrenching, heart-racing kiss ever. His lips were soft and they seemed to hug hers perfectly. Earth to Doe, Junior said, bringing her back to the present. What? She said, smiling. It's showtime, Dahlia said, pulling her by the hand. Cheerleading was one of the hardest things Doe has ever done. She had to be happy, peppy, and positive for about 2 hours. Longer if the game went into overtime. Let's go, fellas! You got it, you got it! Dolores yelled, kicking up her leg. Dahlia looked at her. Wow, you are loud, she said. My mom used to coach my hockey team. We had to be loud. Tammy, the captain, called out a cheer. 'Cause you can't jam like we do. Can you jam? You know we can. Can you jam? You know we can. Watch what we do. Don't steal our moves 'cause you can't jam like we do. They won the game 44-12. Party at Cody's house, Mark yelled as they danced off the field. Everyone was hooting and cheering. Are you coming? Xander asked. I'd love to, but I can't. I gotta get home before my dad, Dolores said. Xander handed her a slip of paper out of his pocket. Well, if you change your mind, call me, he said. He kissed her and then ran off to take a shower. What was that? Dahlia asked, jumping all over her. Was that a sign of your newly found undying love? Dolores grinned ear from ear. No, it was You know what, Dahlia, mind your business, okay? Dolores got dressed and started to walk home. Her car was in the driveway with a flat that wouldn't be fixed until the next day. It's way too late for a pretty little thing like you to be walking around alone at night, called James' voice. Dolores looked around. James was driving behind her in his truck. She walked over to him. Well, James, in California, I walked the streets in the dead of night alone, Dolores said, with a knowing smile. Get in, he said, opening the door. She jumped in. You did a great job tonight, James said, taking off. Dolores tried to hide her smile. Thanks. And I enjoy your journals. They're the more interesting ones I get to read, he laughed. Dolores couldn't help but notice how handsome he was when he smiled. I don't mean to be nosy, but what happened the first time you ran away? James asked. Dolores looked at her hands. Don't answer that, I'm sorry. No, it's okay. When my mom died, I just left. I took a train as far as I could. I made it to Texas. I would have went all the way to North Carolina if the cops hadn't been looking for me. Dolores took a breath and then smiled. I had to get this far. I had to get as far away from my mama's death as I could. Turns out I can't run from my own pain. Yeah, you have to face things like pain head on, or they'll never go away, James said, running his hands through his hair. It looked longer. It was getting longer to stare at him. What? Yeah, okay, moment. It was getting longer and starting to hang in his eyes, the hair. Why are you looking at me like that? He asked, smiling. Dolores looked away. I'm just happy, that's all, she answered. This wouldn't be about that little scrap of paper in your hand, would it? He asked, glancing at her. Yeah. Xander gave me his number, she said, twisting the paper in her hands. So are you guys talking? James asked, pulling into their street. No, No, this is just in case I change my mind about the party tonight, she said as they pulled up to her house. Her dad wasn't home yet. Oh, then that kiss was his lips falling onto yours, James joked. You could say that, Dolores said. James held out his hands. It was soft and warm, yet firm. They looked at each other for a long moment. Her hands were going numb. Thanks for the ride, she said, all of a sudden nervous. Dolores jumped out of the truck and basically ran into the house. Chapter 7. Dolores never called Xander that night. However, she did invite him to play a little pool. She won the first few games. He won a few games. To break the tie, they played 7 minutes in heaven until it was time for him to go to work. Now, it was near the end of October, and Dolores was in her garden weeding her tomatoes. James' car pulled up and 2 people got out. James, I love you so much, a woman's voice said. A tall, blonde, big-breasted woman was holding James' hand as they walked to the back door. This woman had been in and out of his house all year. She only came like every other weekend. Dahlia and Junior thought she was a weekend whore and they hated her. Secretly, Dolores thought so too and silently agreed with their hate for her. Dolores watched James' hand run down the back and rest on her butt as they kissed. She looked away. You have no idea how bad I want you, she said, pushing him against the wall. They kissed intensely, making out wild slurping sounds. Dolores made a wow face and then got up. Get a room, she screamed in her mind. She tried to sneak into the house, but James saw her. Whoa, hey, Dolores, James said, pushing the woman off of him. Hey, James, don't let me stop you. I was just going in, Dolores said. Doe, this is Kate Swan. Kate, this is one of my students, Doe, James said. Dolores shook Kate's hand. Nice to meet you, Kate. He forgot to tell you I'm his favorite student, Dolores said with a fake smile. She laughed. Well, he forgot to tell you I'm his fiancé, she said with an evil smile. Dolores' smile almost slipped off her face. Well, congratulations, Dolores said. Yeah, he's moving to New York with me after this year, Kate went on. James gave Dolores a little smile. Cool. We'll see you at the Halloween dance, Mr. P, she said, walking into her house. I'll be there too, Kate called after her. Dahlia, Mark, Jr., and Xander were waiting in Dolores' living room. Dahlia and Mark were dressed as Rose and Jack off the Titanic. Jr. was dressed as Beyonce. Xander was dressed like a bum, and Dolores was dressed like an evil witch. Doe, you look great, Xander said, giving her a kiss. Ew, we got to save it for the dance floor, Jr. said. Are you guys ready? Dolores asked. Yeah, Mark rode with Xander in Xander's car while Junior and Dahlia rode with Dolores. Hey, remember that woman we see going in Mr. P's house every other weekend? Dolores asked. Yeah, is that whore back? Dahlia asked, rolling her eyes. How about that's his fiancé? Junior snapped his pocket mirror closed. What? He said, leaning forward. Yeah, he's moving to New York after this school year, Dolores went on. Hold up. My man is getting married to that female? Junior asked, on his way to a bitch fit, as Dahlia liked to call it. Dahlia said something in rapid-fire Spanish, then repeated herself in English. No way he's marrying her. She's not even that pretty. Everything on her is fake, from her blonde extensions to those implanted ass of hers, you know? Dolores pulled into the school parking lot. Let's not worry about her. We got a party to rock, Dolores said, getting out. Junior looked at her. See, that's that white people talk I be telling you about. Black on the outside, white in the middle. The party was already popping when they walked in. Mrs. Crabtree was taking money at the door. Dahlia, Mark paid your way in, and Dolores, Xander paid your way in, Mrs. Crabtree said, pushing up her glasses. Junior smiled at the teacher. Okay, so who paid my way in? He asked, flipping his hair. You, she said, sitting back. Junior rolled his eyes and handed over $5. I love that old Grouch costume, Junior called, walking into the party. I'm not wearing a costume, she called after them. Dahlia found the boys first. Oh, you paid my way in, Dahlia said, kissing Mark. Junior hit both the boys across the back of the head. Why didn't one of you scrubs pay my way in? Nope, I don't even want to hear it, Junior said, putting his hands up. Dolores and Dahlia laughed as Junior twisted away. Dahlia and Junior put Dolores in a sandwich, and then about 10 more people started grinding on them. Well, Doe, that was some kind of dancing, James said a while after filling her cup with some punch. Dolores eyed him. He was dressed as the lion off of The Wizard of Oz. He even looked good covered in fur. Is there nothing this man looks good in? Dolores asked herself. It's fun. You should try it sometime, Dolores said, taking a sip. Just then Kate came dressed over as the Good Witch of the North. Oh, James, this is a darling little dance. It makes me feel young again, Kate said, spinning. I bet you said that when you got your boobs done, Dolores said, just as loud enough for them to hear. James' eyes widened. Oh, how cute. You look so... What are you supposed to be, some kind of dead thing? She asked, looking in disgust. A witch, Dolores said. Kate smiled. Give or take a letter, she said, holding James' hand. Kate, you wanna... James started. Dolores cut him off. Well, I don't have to ask you what you are. You're a whore. I'm sorry. A horse in a pink dress. By now, Dolores and Junior came over. Doe, let's give lap dances to... Oh my God. I'm sorry. Okay. Oh my God, Dahlia said, recognizing Kate. James cleared his throat. Kate, more of my students, Junior and Dahlia. Kate held her hand out in a pageant smile and put on a pageant smile. Junior held his hand on his hip and Dahlia was looking at her nails. Guys, this is Mr. P's bride-to-be, Dolores said sweetly. Dahlia put on a fake smile. Congratulations. You're the one marrying my teacher, she said, rolling her eyes. Junior made a face. Come on, let's bounce, he said. Dolores, Dahlia, and Junior walked to a corner. She's not even that pretty, Dahlia said, crossing her legs. He ain't gonna marry her. He's my man, Junior said. Dolores laughed. Junior, for the last time, Mr. P ain't gay, she said. That's what you want to think. Want to dance? Xander asked as a slow song came on. He took her hand and pulled her to the floor. James and Kate were dancing next to them. As they danced, Dolores' eyes met James. She shivered. Are you cold? Xander asked, looking at her. She shook her head. Your eyes are so beautiful, Dolores said, smiling at Xander. Really? I was just thinking the same thing about your lips, Xander said, leaning in. Their lips touched for a split second. We'll have none of that, James said quickly to them. Dolores looked around. Well, if you look to your left, you will see Kate and Omar locking lips, Dolores said, lifting an eyebrow. Yeah, well, you're the ones I caught, he shot back. Doe, I'm gonna go get us some punch, Xander said, walking away. Dolores looked at her teacher. Thanks, she mouthed and stormed off. The dance ended at 12. Dahlia rode home with Mark and Xander. Junior went off with some guy who was to be added to his DL list. Dolores stayed and helped clean up for about an hour or so. When Doe got home, she found a note from her father on the bed. He had another business trip. Something about bad bolts being shipped to them. She took a bath and laid in her bed. About 5 minutes, and she was like, can't sleep. She got up, fixed herself a cup of warm milk. Dolores sat on the sofa on her back porch, Suddenly, James' porch light came on. He was taking out some trash. "What are you doing up?" he said, lifting the trash can lid. "I can't sleep," she said, taking a sip. "What are you drinking?" he asked. "Something to take the edge off, help me sleep," she said, taking another sip. James walked over to her and took her cup. He smelled it, and then he took a sip. "Milk," he said, rolling his eyes. "Warm milk," she said, taking her cup back. "Dahlia and Junior don't like your fiancé, she said, looking at him. "Yeah, they say that, you're their man, but they'll get over it. I mean, Dahlia has Mark and Junior has half the guys in school." She laughed. She took another sip. "And you have Xander," James added. "No, Xander is a free man. I have the comfort of Jen hiding under my bed upstairs," she said, smiling. "But you kissed him." "You were practically having sex on the dance floor," James said, not smiling anymore. "1, everyone dances like that. You should try it sometime with that bimbo of yours. And 2, it wasn't a kiss. For some reason, it didn't last long enough, therefore making it a peck." Dolores raised an eyebrow at him. "What?" "I had to cut it short. It was inappropriate," he said, smiling. Dolores just looked at him. "I'm sorry I messed up your little moment," he said, looking sad. He was so cute, even when he looked sorry. Dolores thought, feeling her heart melt. "You can't stay mad at me forever." Dolores rolled her eyes. "I'm not mad. I've kissed Xander many times." James made a "oh" face. She stood up and walked to her door. James stood up and grabbed her arm. He looked into her eyes. So blue, so deep, she thought. James reached over and touched her face. "I think Kate might be wondering what's taking you so long," Dolores said, closing her eyes. She loved the feeling of him touching her. "She's on her way back to New York," he said. James was so close that she could feel his breath. He smells so good," she thought, playing with her lips. James ran a thumb over her lips. She kissed his thumb softly. Dolores was sure that James could hear her heart thumping in her chest. "Good night, James," she said, opening the door and quickly going in. She closed the door in his face. "Good night, Dolores," she heard him say before walking away. Chapter 8. "Doe," Xander called at the end of drama class. "Yeah?" she said, looking around for him. "Let's go out to eat. Just the 2 of us," Xander said, taking her book bag. "Okay, where we going? Your mom's diner?" she asked as they drove off campus. Xander smiled and patted his pocket. "Man, I forgot my wallet," he said, turning on his street. "I'll be right back," he said, jumping out of his car and rushing into the house. Dolores looked at her cell phone. 5 minutes had already passed. She called him. "Yeah," Xander answered. He sounded like he was rushing. "Xander, is everything okay?" she asked, pulling her ear away from the phone. He sounded like he was dropping something. Yeah. Though this is going to take a few minutes. So just come in and have a seat. I'll be ready in a few," he said quickly and then hung up. She had no choice but to go into the house. As she walked in, she tried to suppress a smile. Xander was sitting in the middle of the living room with a plate of pizza rolls, and next to it was a bowl of cherries and strawberries. "Xander, this is so sweet," Dolores said, sitting next to him. "I'd hope you like it. I'm not much of a cook, so pizza rolls are the only thing I can make," he explained, turning a little red. Dolores kissed him. "I love pizza rolls." They fed each other food in between kisses. Xander brought out a chocolate and honey dip for the fruit. Xander dipped a cherry in the chocolate and fed it to Dolores. A little chocolate fell on her collarbone. Xander licked it off. One lick led to another, and next thing they know, they were rolling around on the floor with their shirts off. Xander looked at her. "Date me?" he asked. Dolores ran her fingers through his hair. "Yeah?" she said, smiling. They kissed a little longer. Dolores' hips started vibrating. "Oh, Lord, that scared me," she said, pulling out her phone. Who is it? Xander asked, lying next to her. It's Dahlia. She sent a text. Where are you? Class started 15 minutes ago. Dolores closed her phone and sat up. I guess we gotta go, Xander said, handing Dolores her shirt. Race to see who can blow out the most candles? She asked, putting on her shirt. They cleaned up real quick and rushed to class. A few minutes later, James raised an eyebrow at them. Got held up at Flem's, Dolores said with a smile. Yeah, Xander said, to reinforce her explanation. We were on page 363, James said a little coldly. The rest of the class passed normally. Dolores spent most of her time writing Dahlia and junior notes. At the end of class, the phone rang. James was saying a lot of yeses and a few no problems. The bell rang and everyone left. Xander took Dolores' bag. Doe, hold on for a minute, James said. I'll meet you in the gym, Dahlia said. Dolores said, taking her backpack. Xander kissed her on the forehead and left. Phone for you. She took it. Yes? She asked. Doe, I need your car. I have a business trip to go to in GA, and I got some legal papers to sign. Your car is way better with long drives. So I know you can't drive stick, so Mr. Pygmy said that he would drive you to and from school and games, her father said. But Daddy, why can't you just rent a car or at least let Xander drive me? Dolores complained. I'd rather you be with an adult. I don't like Xander. Oh, and no boys in the house. I got your teacher watching. He tells me everything, he added. Dolores rolled her eyes. Whatever. Bye. She hung up the phone. Do you really watch My House for My Dad? She asked. James smiled. Maybe. Dolores was standing in the parking lot at the end of the football game. They had lost the game because the referee threw a flag on their winning play. But I can take you home, Xander said, standing next to his car. Dolores was leaning on him. I know, but my dad wants me to be around an adult. He got Mr. P to watch the house and make sure that no one comes over. But I'm sure he doesn't watch my house during the day, she said with a wink. Xander leaned in to kiss her when James pulled up. Ready, Dolores? He said before their lips could touch. Call me, Xander said, kissing her forehead. Dolores got in the truck and drove off. So are you sticking with the story about Flem's? James asked. Dolores smiled. Well, if you must know. He fixed me a picnic in the middle of his living room, she said, gazing at him. Oh, how sweet, James said, rolling his eyes. Dolores hit his arm playfully. It was sweet, she said. Dang on it, Petey. Stop jumping on my It was sweet, she said. Yeah? Did he make you a nice duck with honey glaze and some red wine, he asked, stopping at a red light. He made me pizza rolls with a side of strawberries and cherries drizzled with chocolate and honey, Dolores said with an Italian accent. James laughed. Cute. How sad that he made you a microwave dinner when he could have just got something from his mother's diner, James said, pulling up. Says the man who brought his neighbor a chicken casserole out of the box, Dolores said, giving him an evil eye. Before James could say another word, Dolores got out the car and slammed the door. About an hour or so later, Dolores was sitting in front of the fireplace reading a book for James's class. There was a knock at the back door. She smiled to herself. Xander was such a devil coming to the house. She fixed her hair before opening the door. James held up a microwave chocolate cake that said sorry written in fudge. She rolled her eyes and walked away. Doe, I'm sorry for what I said. It was really romantic what Xander did for you, James said, sitting next to her. Dolores closed the book and watched him. If you forgive me, you'll at least take one bite, he said. He took a piece of cake with his fingers and held it to her. Dolores didn't mean to, but she looked into his eyes and started to melt. She parted her lips and let him feed her. Her heart was pounding so fast that as she lifted a piece of cake and fed James, he leaned in slowly and parted his lips. This kiss, nope. He leaned in slowly and their lips touched. This kiss was different from Xander's. It was slow, it was passionate, it was warm and soft. Every moment made her whole body tingle. This kiss was wrong, but oh, was it so right. Chapter 9. There was a knock at the door. Dolores opened her eyes and looked at the clock. It was 10 in the morning. James' arms were holding her close. So safe, so warm. They had been kissing all night into the early morning. Another knock. Dolores, Xander's voice called. She sat up. James, she whispered. What? He said, waking up. She covered his mouth. You have to go. Xander's at the front door. Go out the back, she said, walking to the front door. James gathered his things and rushed out. Xander, hi, she said, opening the door. Xander walked in. Doe, it's like 10. You're still in your PJs? Xander said, sitting on the couch. Well, I stayed up late last night reading, she said, picking up the book off the floor. Well, get dressed. I want to take you somewhere, he said, kissing her. While Dolores took a shower, Xander sat in her room and checked out his MySpace. She walked in covered with a robe. Xander smiled and turned his seat to her. She looked at him, playing with her rope tie. I wonder, Xander said, walking to her. He untied her robe to reveal a black bra and panty set. They started kissing, nice and slow. There was no rush. They had all the time in the world. Dolores let her robe fall and took Xander's shirt off. I got a condom in the car, Xander said between kisses. Dolores pushed him on the bed and pulled a condom out of her nightstand. Xander finished getting undressed and got under the covers. Dolores joined him. Are you sure? He asked, looking at her. Are you? She asked. She kissed him. An hour and a half later, they were riding in his car to a field of Seneca grapes. They had spent a few hours picking grapes. These are so good. I have never had them before, Dolores said, popping yet another grape in her mouth. Come on. I've really got to get to work, he said. He took her home. Now it was dusk, and Dolores was weeding her vegetable garden. Hello, Dolores, James said, walking to her. She wiped her brow and looked up. James had a slightly annoyed look on his face. He looked around and said, Last night was eventful, he said. Yes, she said. Not as eventful as this morning, though, he added. I never had to get a guy out of my house so fast, she said, getting up. You know what I'm talking about, James said as he followed her into the kitchen. Well, actually, I don't have a clue what you're talking about, she said, washing her hands. I can see into your room. I saw what happened between you and Xander. Dolores smiled as she sat at her table. You think this is cute? You're not even dating Xander, James said. The day Xander made me pizza rolls, he asked me out, so I haven't been dating him, Dolores said, standing up. Wow, a whole day. So you had sex with him after one day, he said. Wait, what? Why do you care? My body, my choice, Dolores said, getting in his face. Because I'm your teacher, he said, rubbing his neck. James took a step back. Bull. You spent the last night here kissing me. Did you do that because you're my teacher too? She asked hotly. No. I did that because I'm attracted to you. And I know, I could see you and Xander, he yelled. I did not. And what was I supposed to do? She asked. You were supposed to say no, he said, looking at his feet. Oh my God, Dolores said, laughing. What's so funny? James asked. You're jealous. No, I'm not. Yeah, you are, she insisted. Dolores took a deep breath. Look, James, last night what we did was wrong. You're getting married. I'm dating Xander. Dolores looked out the window. It was getting dark. You're right. We'll just pretend like it never happened. James open the back door. It's not like last night meant anything anyway. It was only a stupid kiss, he said, slamming the door. Dolores ran to her door. What? She yelled at him. See you Monday, student, James yelled to her, slamming his own door. Dolores went to James' back door and banged on it. What? He yelled, opening the door. Dolores looked at him for a moment and made to slap him. James grabbed her arm and pulled her in for a wild, passionate kiss. I think someone likes me, James said, kissing her again. This kiss was short and smooth. You like me back, Dolores said, running her hands through his soft hair. Chapter 10. Congratulations, you are the 2007-2008 prom committee. For those who don't know, my name is Mr. Pygmy. Though many of my students like to call me Mr. P, James said to a small group of 24 students. Most of them were juniors, a few freshmen, and only one senior, Dolores. Seniors typically weren't allowed to be on the prom committee. However, after her father found out Dolores was dating Xander, compliments of James, she wasn't allowed to be alone with him while her dad was on business trips. I don't want to come home a grandfather, her dad said before he left. To make things worse, her father asked Monica and Chuck to pop over around 8 to make sure she was okay and then call him. And to add insult to injury, she had to ride to and from school with James. Dolores had almost no time to spend with Xander. They mostly spoke on the phone and did web chats. When her dad was home, things eased up. We have $1,200 in our account, and unfortunately, that's not enough. The good thing is that we are allowed to have one fundraiser, so it has to be good. Any suggestions? James asked, standing in front of the class. A few suggested selling plates, some wanted to sell candy bars, and one even wanted to have a talent show. Do you have any proposals? James asked. Dolores was sitting in the back reading the magazine, clearly not listening. She looked up. Well, when we needed money, my school, we would have just done everything suggested, she said. The girl looked down her nose at Dolores and snorted. Honey, I think you need to clean the wax out of your ears. We're only allowed to do one thing, she said with a sassy smile. Dolores' eyes hardened and she stood up. I hear him loud and clear, she said, walking to the girl's desk and looking her in the eye. My suggestion was to do it all. And if you weren't trying to look so smooth, you would have noticed I suggested a loophole. Do it. Add some games, a few rides, and call it a fair, Dolores said. The girl looked scared and a little frustrated. Dolores leaned in closer. Try me one more again, she whispered in the girl's ears. That's a wonderful idea, though. Please have a seat, James said quickly. All in favor of a fair? James asked. Everyone raised their hands. Well, except for that girl. Okay, great. They spent the next hour or so discussing games, food, rides. Dolores wrote everything down. This is the country. You tell me you can't get a hayride or a boat ride? Dolores asked. A boy named Cameron spoke up. My grandpa owns a tractor. He can pull a bed of hay. And we can use my boat for boat rides, James said. The girl who had badmouthed Dolores spoke up. How are we going to keep up with all that money? We can't just have all that money floating around in the stations, she said. Dolores hated to admit, but the girl had a point. No one said anything for a moment. Tickets. We can sell tickets, like for games and snack tables. That way all the money stays in one booth, and it could be like 10 tickets for $2. The rides could be 3 tickets. Games could be depending on the game, Dolores said, smiling. Yes, and check this, said a black girl with long hair and blue highlights. We can give tickets for each empty can and 2 for bottles, then recycle them and get the money that way too, she said, practically jumping. You're a genius, Dolores said. She truly meant it. Okay, well, today has been productive, but it's time to go. If you have any ideas, write it down and I'll have an announcement next week in our next meeting, James said, getting up. Everyone left eventually. That was a great idea, James said as they got into his car. Seeing how was your idea, would you like to be team leader? He asked. Yeah, I love a challenge, she said, rolling her eyes. Dolores spent most of her time planning the fair. She ended up needing more people to help, so she got the whole senior class, football team, cheerleaders, and underclassmen to help. Dolores split them up into teams. She liked how she got 5 football players and 5 cheerleaders to run in kissing booth, and some cotton candy, and some so on and so forth. She also had a small team of 7 people be her assistants while planning this thing. Dolores spent most of her time with James. Sometimes they worked on plans, and other times they made out. Okay, most of the time they made out. They almost got caught a few times by Kate when she would come visit. Seeing how life isn't fair, not everything went as planned. Some people panicked while others were late. Some didn't want to work the whole time. However, the whole day was wonderful. They spent about $1,000 and made $250,000. Wow, Chastity, you cannot math. More people came than was planned ever predicted. After a day of all playing boss and the fair was over, Dolores collected all of the money and gave it to James. Cleanup seemed to take forever, and after many hours, it was done. All that was left was for Dolores, James, and Kate to go home. Dolores was lifting the 5th bag of soda cans into James' boat. She saw James in the parking lot talking to Kate, whose face was red. Her arms were crossed and tears were running down her face. James said something to Kate and she smacked him. She got into the car and peeled off. Dolores lifted the last bag into the boat and got in. A moment later, James got into the boat and they took off. As soon as they were out of sight, he turned the boat off and turned to Dolores. I saw her smack you. What did you say to her? Dolores said, kissing the red handprint on his face. James pulled her into his lap. I broke up with her, he said. What? Why? Dolores asked, shocked. I told her I wasn't ready to get married. Dolores got up and started pacing. I didn't know whether to be happy or pissed off. Kate was your cover, Dolores said, getting frustrated. James walked over to her, trying to hug her. No, Dolores said, pushing him away. What if people start to notice what we're doing? What if we get caught? She asked, her eyes welling up in tears. James grabbed her face and forced her to look at him. Doe, I'm in love, he said, wiping her tears away. But not with Kate. I love you, he said, looking into her eyes. I love you too, she said, leaning in for one of his sweet kisses. Chapter 11. Dolores knocked on James's door at 7:30. She had promised to help him make test prom cakes. Dolores wanted to tell James that she didn't think that she and James should be seeing each other. Come in, James called from the other side. James, where are you? Dolores called, looking around for him. In the kitchen. Dolores pushed the door open to the kitchen. James was wearing white tee, blue jeans, and an apron that says, Run, I'm about to cook. Should I take that advice? She asked, sitting on the stool. James put a bowl down next to her. Ha ha. He leaned in for a kiss. Dolores turned her head. What's wrong? He asked. Dolores got down and moved away from James. I don't know. I'm not being fair to Xander. I mean, he's such a good guy, and these last couple of weeks with you, I feel kind of guilty, she said. Do you love him? James asked, watching her. She took a moment to think. I don't know. James, I don't think we should be together. I think we should be professional and not date. James' smile slid off his face. Is that what you want? He asked, looking at his feet. James, I'm sorry. It is. It's just... James held up his hands and smiled. Look, no worries. Let's make the practice cakes, James said. Dolores started on the recipe for red velvet cake. The school let me borrow the portable oven, though it would have been better if they just given me the key to the school's cooking classroom, James said, mixing the chocolate cake. They listened to some music and cooked for a while. They were singing and dancing and just having a good time. It's like 7:30. No. It's like 12:30, and now if you're hungry, we can order some Chinese food. My treat, James said, looking at his watch. Dolores agreed, and while James was gone, she watched TV and checked on the cakes in the oven. "Doe, I'm back," James called from the front door. Dolores rushed in. "Oh, thank God, I am starving," she said, helping him. They ate on the floor in the living room. Dolores watched James as he ate. "What?" he asked softly. His eyes, whenever she looked at him, she just had him in class. She had seen him in class a few times. Nothing, it's funny. Just to see you eating on the floor, it's so weird, she said, laughing. Why? Why is that? He asked. Sometimes when I look at you, it hits home that you're a teacher. My teacher, she said, eating some of her soup. I'm also human, like everyone else, James said, looking innocent. The timer went off. I'll go take the cakes out, she said. Dolores put the cake on the cooling rack and then put another cake in the oven to bake. They finished eating and cleaned up. Oh my Lord, the cake looks so good, Dolores said, putting a second layer on her cake. Dolores' bangs fell into her eyes and she was trying to blow them out of her face. Here, let me help you, James said. He tucked her hair behind her ears and in the process got a little frosting on her cheek. Oh, I'm sorry, he said. Dolores put a little frosting on his nose. Hey, mine was by accident, he said. Sorry, she said with a hint of sarcasm in her voice. James looked at her with mischief in his eyes. James, whatever you're thinking, don't do it, Dolores said, taking a step back and smiling. James dipped his hand in a bowl of frosting and rubbed it all over her hair and her face. James, no, it's hard to get frosting out of my hair, she said, running from him. She grabbed the bowl and they started fighting, flinging frosting at each other. Soon the walls and the floors were covered in frosting. At one point, James had slipped and fell, pulling Dolores down with him. She leaned on top of him, out of breath and running and laughing. Are you okay? She asked, rubbing the back of his head. Yeah, he said. Their eyes connected, and it was like the first time. And time did stop. Dolores blinked, and the world started spinning again. I'm sorry, she said, trying to get up. James held her close. Then he kissed her. It was like the first kiss, soft and hungry. James pulled Dolores closer, kissing her with the hot intensity of 1,000 suns. This isn't right, Dolores said, getting up. No, please. Don't you love me? Dolores looked at him with tears in her eyes. I don't know, James. I have to go, she said, running out of the house. Later that night, James was laying in bed thinking about Dolores. It had to be a student. I have to fall for a student, he said, rubbing his temples. James was a little angry at how she had just run out on him like a typical teenager. Then again, she was a typical teenager. Would have never worked anyway, he said, looking at his clock. It was 11:25. There was a knock at the door. Who would be here at this time? He asked, heading to the front door. There was a knock again. It was coming from the back door. Who? He called, slowly approaching the door. James, it's me, Dolores, he heard her call. What are you doing here? He asked, looking around and pulling her in. I need to talk to you, she said. What's your father going to say when he finds you gone? James said, shutting the door. He won't. I gave him sleeping pills about an hour ago. He's going to be out for the rest of the night, she said, smiling, pulling off her jacket. She had on a sexy yellow top and matching yoga pants that made his eyes travel all over her body. Fine, talk, James said, staying near the door. I do love you, she said, looking at him. He shivered. It was like she was looking into his soul. James stared at her, wanting her to say something else. She walked to him. That's what I wanted to tell you. To let you know. Dolores made to kiss him, but he turned away. Okay, she said, running her hands down his arms and turned to get her jacket. James didn't want her to touch him, but he wanted to stay mad at her. However, her touch melted his anger away. James walked to her and kissed her. He was hungry for her lips, her body. She was so soft. James thought as he ran his hands down her back. I love you, Doe. You have no clue how much I love you, James said, lifting her and taking her to his bedroom. Then why don't you show me? They kissed on his bed, and about 5 minutes later, all their clothes were on the floor. Chapter 12. Xander and Dolores pulled up to her house. They had just come from watching the newest Saw movie. I hate you, Dolores said, hitting him. What? I told you, we could have seen another one, Xander said, kissing her hand. Yeah, if I'm not brave enough, she said. Xander was looking past her with an oh shit face. Dolores turned quickly. Boo! Xander screamed, poking her on each of her sides. Dolores started screaming and jumped so high she hit her head. Xander, you bastard! Dolores yelled at hitting him. He had been scaring her since the movie. He pulled her into his lap. I'm sorry. You put on such a tough girl act. It's funny to see that a simple movie just can destroy it, he said, wiping tears out of his eyes. LOL, she said, rubbing her head. Aw, let me kiss it for you, make it feel better, Xander said, kissing her cheek. Dolores kissed him back. You hear that? Xander asked softly. What? Dolores said, looking at him. Shh. You hear that? Our hearts beat as one, Xander said, kissing her. I hear it, she whispered. They held each other for a while, studying the stars through the skylight. Dolores, come on, I'll walk you to your door, Xander said as she started to drift. They stood in front of the door. Good night, Xander, Dolores said, opening the door. Good night, Dolores. Dolores Light? Yeah. Dolores Knight. I love you, he said, closing his eyes and preparing for the worst. Dolores smiled at him. I love you too, Xander, she said. Xander let out a deep breath. I was so afraid to tell you, he said, picking her up and spinning. Never be afraid, Dolores said, yawning. I'm going to let you go now, Xander said, kissing her, and he walked to his car. Dolores watched him drive off before walking into her house. Daddy? She asked, flipping on the light. Nope. It was James sitting on the sofa. Oh my, James, you scared me, she said, jumping back. Where's my dad? She sat back, looking at him. James sat back, looking at her. Your dad had an emergency trip. Something about the company shipped the wrong wood, and they won't take it back, he said, rubbing his face. James looked tired, like he had been up all night worrying. James, are you okay? She asked, smiling at him a bit. Where's your phone? He asked. Dolores patted her pocket and pulled out the cell phone and flipped it open. She waved it in the air. Here, but it's off. I forgot to turn it back on after the movie, she said, tossing her phone on the table. Your father said that you were supposed to be home around 11. The movie ended at 9. I checked. Where have you been? He asked. Dolores stared at him. Did you have sex with him again? This question made Dolores put her hands on her hips and suck her teeth. Who are you? Dolores crossed her arms and cocked her eyebrow. Dolores, don't take it like that, James said, getting up. How am I supposed to take it, James? She said, picking up her phone. It's just, you're 4 hours late, he said, walking to her. Whatever, she said, walking upstairs. James followed her. Dolores hit him with her room door. Damn it, Doe. I want you to break it off with Xander, James said, sitting on her bed and rubbing his forearm. What? No, Dolores said, as if she couldn't believe her ears. Doe, you have to, James pleaded. Oh, I have to, she asked, looking at him. Dolores couldn't believe what James was saying. I can't take it. I hate the way he looks at you, the way he touches you. I can't bear the thought of you kissing him, the way you look at him. I hate that boy. I hate the fact that you love him, he said, looking at her. James' eyes were watering. He took a hold of her hands. I feel like I'm losing you. Dolores pulled him into a hug. We only have to wait a few more months, and then Xander will go to state. No breakups needed. No one gets hurt, Dolores said, kissing the top of his head. Do you love him more than me? James asked, sounding very childlike. Of course not. I can never love another man more than you, she said, getting behind him and rubbing his back. Then break up with him, James said, getting up. Dolores groaned and fell back. No, James, I don't want to do it, she said, covering her face. Why? What are you afraid of? That someone's going to find out? Doe, I promise you that we will not get caught. Dolores sat up. No, it's not just me and Xander's relationship is fine. What would I break up with him for? James sat next to her, looking into her big brown eyes. You don't need a reason. Just do it, he said, cupping her cheek. No, she almost yelled. Dolores got up and stood by her closet door. Why not? I needed it with Kate for you, James yelled back. I didn't ask you to, she cried with hot anger. James watched tears flow down her face for a moment. You love him, he said, getting up. No, not the way I love you. I love him as a friend, but I love you, she cried even harder, making to go hug him. James pushed her hands away softly. No, you don't, because if you did, you wouldn't be putting me through all of this, James said, turning his head from her kiss. He headed downstairs. Well, if you loved me, you wouldn't be putting me through this, Dolores shot back. James turned to face her halfway down the stairs. Don't you dare twist this on me. Don't you dare say I don't love you, because I do. I love you so much that I picked you over Kate. Cat, James shouted. Stop saying that. I didn't ask you to choose, so let it go, she said. James started to the door, and Dolores followed him. We're not even supposed to be together. It's illegal. But I love you, she said, stepping between James and the back door. Choose. Right now. What do you want? Me or Xander? Because you can't have us both, James said, looking at her. His deep blue eyes took her breath away. James, I can't do it. And I won't, she cried into his chest. Then I'll do it for you, James said, forcing her aside. James, stop. James, Dolores cried, holding his arm as he walked out the door. He snatched his arm away from her. Fine. I don't need you, she yelled after him. I would have chosen Xander anyway, she yelled as James slammed his back door. Dolores closed her back door and fell to the floor crying. For the next week or so, Dolores didn't go to school. She didn't want any visitors, and she didn't take any calls. Her dad took off a week just to take care of her. The doctors couldn't explain what was wrong with her, and after an hour, they decided that Dolores was depressed. Doctors said that she was just accepting that her mother's and sister's death. The doctors gave her a low dose of depression pills and told them that she would be fine as soon as she started taking them. Dolores didn't take the pills for the first week. She wanted to feel the pain and remember it. She didn't want to become numb. Not yet. Dolores would sleep all day and cry through the night. Only after her dad started tricking her into taking the pills did she start feeling better and went to school on a Wednesday. Doe, baby, are you okay? Xander asked, hugging her. Your dad said you weren't feeling well, and I came by every day to ask about you, he went on. Dolores smiled. My dad told me. Knowing that you cared so much made me feel better. Throughout the day, everyone was talking to Doe, asking her how she's doing and glad she was feeling better. Well, I'm happy you're back, Xander said, sneaking a little kiss before class. We'll have none of that, James said, looking out his door. "Oh, come on, Mr. P. I haven't kissed her in what feels like ages," Xander said, smiling. "Yeah," Dolores chimed in, putting her arm around his neck. James smiled through Dolores. Dolores could see the coldness in his eyes. James smiled, though Dolores could see the coldness in his eyes. "Good to have you back in class, Dolores," James said, watching her take her seat. "I had to come back. Prom is right around the corner," Doe said with her enchanting smile. James closed his eyes and turned away. "And all of this time, I thought you were getting better for me," Xander said, poking her. Dolores laughed. "That too." For the next 3 weeks, Dolores didn't so much look at James outside of her one class with him. She even talked her dad into getting Mr. and Mrs. Davis to be her checkpoint while her father was gone. She got her car back, and her dad even let Xander visit during the day. Dolores and Xander went shopping for her prom dress, and after a few times they found a beautiful soft yellow one. Xander got a black tux with a tie to match her dress. "Hold on, one more," Xander's mom said, flashing the camera. Dolores and Xander were in her living room with Monica and Chuck and Xander's mom and Dolores' dad, and each taking pictures. "Mom, you're gonna make us late," Xander said. "I know, baby, I'm sorry," she said, wiping a tear off her cheek. "Mom, you said you wouldn't cry," Xander said, kissing her. Dolores smiled and fixed his tie. "But you're her baby," she said, looking at his watch. "You'll be on time," Chuck said, taking his own pictures. "Oh, my baby senior prom," Dolores' father said, kissing her on the cheek. "Dad?" "Oh, Chuck, this reminds me of our prom," Monica said, kissing him. "Okay, time to go before she starts the story," Dolores said, taking Xander's hand. They drove to the gym and stood in line. "Okay, Doe, I won't be home when you get home, so check in with the Davises before you go to bed," her father said. Dolores kissed him. "I love you, Daddy." Xander and Dolores got announced and walked in. They took their pictures and hit the party. Dolores took off her shoes as soon as she got to the table she shared with her friends and went on the dance floor. After a few dances, she made her way around the room talking to everyone. "Dahlia, you look so cute. And Junior, you're hot as always," Dolores said, hugging them. Dahlia had on a light green dress and Junior had on a strapless gold dress with matching heels. "Where's Mark?" Dolores asked. Junior rolled his eyes. "He's in the bathroom. He said the sight of Junior in a dress makes him sick," Dahlia said. "He's just mad because he don't look half as good as I do," Junior said, rubbing himself. Though throughout the night, the staff gave out door prizes. "And the winner of $500 is," James paused for dramatic effects, "Dolores Knight." Dolores jumped up, danced her way to get her money. "Congratulations, Dolores." "What do you plan on doing with it?" James asked. "Blowing it," Dolores said, not looking at him. It was obvious she didn't care what James had to say. At 11:35, they announced the prom king and queen. "Your 2007-2008 prom king is Xander Spencer, and prom queen is Dahlia Liverman and Junior Brickhouse," James said, looking at them. Dolores smiled. "Let Junior have it. He wants it more," Dolores said, laughing. Junior and Dahlia ran up to the front to fight over the crown. "All I want is the crown. You can have the rest," Junior said. Dahlia took the sash and the staff. "I have a crown at home anyway, and it's way bigger than that one," she said. The king and queens will now have a dance," James said, laughing. Dolores watched Xander dance with both the queens at the same time and as far away as possible from Junior. "May I have this dance?" James asked from beside her. James looked at him and then walked. No. Dolores looked at him and walked away. The dance ended at 12, and Xander and Dolores stayed after to help clean up and then drove home. "Chad's having an after party. You want to go?" Xander asked. Dolores yawned. No, I'm pretty tired. You go, have fun, she said, looking at him. I don't want to go without you, he said, stopping at a red light. Xander, I know you want to go. I trust you to go to a party alone. Plus, I don't think Monica would like me coming home at like 8 in the morning the next day. She laughed. They pulled into her house. Okay, well, I'll see you later, Xander said. Dolores kissed him. Yes, we can play the Xbox, she said. God, you're the coolest girlfriend ever. I love you, Xander said, kissing her again. I love you too, she said, getting out. Xander took off and Dolores walked across to the Davises. You look so happy, Monica said, letting her in. Chuck was asleep in his lazy boy. Chuck, wake up, Doe is here, she said, kicking his chair. Who got queen? She asked with her big smile. Dahlia did, she said, deciding that Monica didn't need to know that a boy wanted too. I was rooting for you, she said. Dolores smiled. I did win $500. I must have left it in Xander's car, though, she said, making a mental note to get it back. They talked for about 15 minutes. Then Chuck broke Monica's grip on Dolores. Honey, Doe is sleepy. Let the girl go to home, he said, smiling. Good night, Dolores said, walking out. Dolores walked into her house. She was heading upstairs when someone knocked on the back door. Who? She called, putting her stuff on the sofa. It was James. His hair was in his eyes, his tie was undone, and he was still in his suit. Dolores rolled her eyes and started to close the door. Dolores, no, wait, James said, pushing his way in. James, Mr. Pygmy, go home, she said, watching him. I just wanted to tell you that you look beautiful tonight, he said, looking at her. Dolores didn't look at him. She was afraid to see love in his eyes. Okay, now leave, she said, turning her back on him. If I go, I'll go if you answer one question with the complete truth. Dolores didn't say anything. James took a deep breath. Do you love me? Dolores turned and looked at him with an empty stare. She walked to the door and opened it. He shook his head. That's not an answer, he said, looking at her. Oh, but it is, she said, holding the door open. He closed the door and pinned her against it. Do you love me? She tried to break free. No, she said carefully. James kissed her with all the weeks of pent-up passion. Dolores pushed away. I love you, Doe. And I know you love me, he said, taking her hand. No, if you loved me, you wouldn't have walked out on me, she said, hitting him. You would have came by and checked up on me when you didn't see me in school for weeks. At least Xander came by every day. She pushed him into the wall. James held up his hands, letting her hit him. If you loved me, you wouldn't have left, she cried into his chest. James put his arms around her. I heard you cry every night, and I cried with you. That night we fought, I heard you tell Xander you love him, and I thought I was losing you, he cried. Dolores pulled away from him. You lost me when you walked out that door, she said, watching tears spill down his face. Doe, I came here to tell you that you are my air, my heart, my world, and one day. James got on his knees and pulled out a box with a ring in it. My wife. Dolores cried and fell to her knees. He slipped the ring on her finger. Dolores Knight, I never want to lose you again. Ever. Will you marry me? He asked, looking at her. He wiped the tears off her face, only for them to be replaced with new ones. Dolores looked at the ring. It was a perfect fit. Yes, she whispered. He hugged and kissed her. I love you so much, Dolores cried out loud. He kissed her again and again. James carried her to the living room, and they began to undress each other. James and Dolores made love with intense passion on the floor. Chapter 13. Xander woke up at 9 a.m. It was the day after prom, and he was all ready to see his baby. Dolores was probably awake, seeing how she went to bed before him and had a better night's sleep. He was still a little sleepy, but he wanted to be in Dolores' arms. Being with her was the only thing that made him happy. She had left her $500 in his car last night. He decided that he would take it to her early and fall asleep in her arms. Xander passed Monica and Chuck's on the way up to Dolores' house. He pulled up to Doe's house and grabbed the money. Xander heard soft music playing and voices. Xander looked into the window and his heart dropped. Xander saw James and Dolores going at it on the floor. Xander's blood was boiling red hot as he watched Dolores run her fingers through his teacher's hair. Dolores had never looked at him the way she was looking at James. "Xander, I think the door is open," Monica called, walking with Chuck towards the house. Xander wasn't even listening to her. He walked into the door and busted it open. "Bitch!" he yelled. Both James and Dolores jumped up. "Xander," Dolores said, getting up, thanking God she had on a large shirt. "I was going to tell you, I swear," she said, walking to him, taking hold of his arm. Xander pushed her a little harder than he meant to into a bookshelf. He only had eyes for James. "Xander, no, stop it. Stop," she yelled at the top of her voice. "What on earth?" Monica asked, walking in, Chuck hot on her heels. Xander pushed Dolores off of him and kept fighting with James. By now, Xander was sporting a black eye and James' lip was busted. Chuck pulled Xander off of James. "Dolores, how could you do this to me? I loved you," he yelled. Monica helped her up. Dolores had a busted lip and hand marks from Xander grabbing her. James went to look at Dolores' lip. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," she said, turning to Xander. "Xander, I'm sorry," she said, walking to him. "I knew something was wrong, but me being so stupid, so blinded by what I thought was love, I thought it was about your mother, not cheating." Dolores reached out to touch his face. He grabbed her left hand. "What is this?" he asked, holding her ring finger. "Xander, you're hurting me," she whimpered. "Is this an engagement ring? Did he ask you to marry him?" he asked. "Xander, you're breaking my finger," she cried out. "Let her go, Xander," James said forcefully. "Fuck off," Xander yelled at him. Chuck placed his hand on Xander's shoulders. "Son, let her go," he said calmly. "Answer me," Xander yelled. Yes, Dolores cried. Xander let go. He headed for the door, then he walked back. How long have you and him been together?" he asked softly. Dolores rubbed her fingers and didn't answer. He grabbed her by the face. "How long?" he asked. Dolores looked into Xander's eyes. They were filled with hurt and anger. He was in love. "A little after we started dating," she cried, looking at him. "You said you loved me," he said calmly. "I do. I still do. But I'm in love with James," she said, tears free falling down her face. "I should slap you," he said, letting her go. Xander walked out of the house. "James," Dolores said, walking to him. Chuck stepped in between them. "Mr. Pygmy, I think it's best you leave," Chuck said, crossing his arm. "No, it's okay. I want him to stay," Dolores said, trying to push past him. Monica held her arms. "We're calling the cops." "Leave," Monica said. "No, James, don't leave. Don't listen to them," Dolores said, fighting harder. "I'm not leaving," James said. Chuck started pushing James to the back door. "James," Dolores called. "Hey, old man, get your hands off me," James said as he got pushed out the door and back down the steps. Chuck slammed the door in his face and locked it. James began banging on the back door. "Doe, I am not leaving you. I love you." Chuck locked the front door and called 911. "He's lying," Dolores yelled as Chuck talked to the 911 operator. He walked into the kitchen. Dolores, please, we're here to help. James is a very sick man, Monica said, trying to calm her down. Dolores cried and spotted the money Xander dropped. I'm so sorry, she said. Darling, you have nothing to be sorry about. You didn't do anything wrong, she said. Dolores kicked Monica in the leg and grabbed the money and ran upstairs. I'm so sorry, but I had to do it, she yelled. Dolores locked her room and got dressed quickly. Dolores stuck her head out the window. James? James, where are you? She called. I'm right here, he said, coming from around the back. Get dressed and packed, she said. I'm coming over. Dolores grabbed a book bag and dumped it. She filled it with clothes, loose change, her prize money, and her pocketbook contents. Dolores opened the door, Chuck said from the other side. Dolores put her bag on and hooked a rope ladder to her window. Her father had brought the ladder just in case there was a fire and she needed to climb down. She climbed out her window and ran to James's house. James? James, she called as she ran into his house. Doe, James yelled, running down the stairs with a load of bags. Dolores jumped on him. I love you. I want to run away with you, she cried, kissing him. Come on. We have to get as far away from here as possible, James said, putting her down. They grabbed the bags and got into the car. Dolores, come back, Chuck yelled after them. Canada? Dolores said. Canada, James agreed. Chapter 14. The 3-day search for English teacher James Pygmy and student Dolores Knight has come to an end. They were found trying to cross the border into Canada by Niagara Falls, New York. We have tape of their arrest here. Let's take a look at it, said the newscaster. A policeman were all around with flashing lights. James! James! Dolores called as the police pulled them both apart. Doe, it'll be okay. We'll be together. It'll be okay, James called. Dolores turned and gave the police what that was holding her a right hook and a knee to the crotch. She ran over to James and kissed him passionately. His hands were cuffed behind his back. Dolores, I love you. Just remember that. I love you, he said, kissing her. Other police were now ripping them apart. I won't leave your side, James, she yelled as they put him into the cop car. She watched the car pull away while the other cuffed her. That was the scene of the arrest of James Pygmy and Dolores Knight. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about the teacher-student relationship. How close is too close? The newscaster said with a smile. Turn it off, Dolores said, sitting in a room that had a bed and a table and a huge wall glass mirror. Her father looked at her and turned the TV off. It was the first time she talked since she'd been forced back into North Carolina, only to end up in this hellhole. Are you ready to talk to me? He said, looking at her. She said nothing. Doe, you won't talk to the police or your friends or me. Who will you talk to? He asked. Dolores looked at her ring James gave her. James, she said softly. Dolores looked up and walked to the mirror and knocked on it. Let me talk to James, and I'll tell you whatever. I know you can see me. I know you can hear me back there, she said calmly. For the next week, she said nothing, holding her vow of silence. Dolores, said Officer Jones. She opened her eyes. We have Pygmy out here. You only get 5 minutes, and I stand here. Dolores sat up. Then take him back, because I won't talk for any less than 15 minutes, and you on the other side of the door, she said, looking at him with a steady eye. 10 minutes, me outside the room with the door open, Officer Jones said. 15 minutes, you on the other side of the glass with everyone else, she said, not standing down. Officer Jones opened the door and let James in. James was in an orange jumpsuit, and his hair was a little messed up. James, she said, running to hug him. They hugged and kissed and sat down. How are you doing? Are they treating you all right? James asked, sitting on the bed with her. Dolores laughed. I should be asking you. You're the one in real jail, she said, running her fingers through his hair. Dolores, you have to start talking, he said, tracing her face with his eyes. I'm being charged with rape of a minor, kidnap, and God knows what else. They're trying to give me 20 years, he said. What? I'm 18 now. I choose to go with you, she said hotly. I know, he said, holding her. This is my fault, Dolores cried into his chest. No, baby, this isn't your fault, he said, kissing her forehead. Yes, it is. If I would have just broke up with Xander, like you said, we wouldn't be in this mess. James wiped her tears away. Everything is going to be okay, he said in a soothing voice. How can you say that when you're facing 20 years? She asked, looking at him. I'm willing to face whatever time they give me. I know that you'll be waiting for me. Then we can get married and have babies. We'll have our happily ever after, he said. He kissed her. I love you, Del, he said. I love you too. Epilogue. Dolores stood outside the jail. She was now 25 years old and had her own hair shop in the mall her dad built. Dahlia and Junior were still Doe's friends, even though she stole their man. Dahlia studied law and wanted to be an undercover cop. Junior became a gay rights leader and wanted to run for office. He didn't win, but he became a TV personality for a home channel. Mark went on to play pro football and proposed to Dahlia after getting his first big check. He never really forgave Dolores for what she did to Xander and won't say a word to her. Xander never talked to Dolores again. He moved to New York and became a playwright. His most famous play was called What Your Man Don't Know. The lead character was a woman named Dolores who cheated on her husband with his boss whenever the rent was overdue, and then accidentally got pregnant. Dolores lived in James's house so it wouldn't get sold off. Mommy, where's Daddy? Said a little girl next to her. Dolores picked her up her 7-year-old daughter. She was a little light brown child with big green eyes and had flecks of gold in them. Her hair was long, curly ponytails. Alex, Daddy will be here any minute, she said, kissing her. Dad, can you hold her for me? She asked, handing Alex to him. Come to Grandpa, he said, smiling. The gate opened and a 32-year-old man walked out. He was buff and his hair was graying on the sides. Dolores ran and jumped on him. Oh, baby, I've missed you so much, James said, spinning her around. Dolores was crying. Why are you crying? He asked, putting her down, laughing. I'm so happy you're free, she said, kissing him with every ounce of passion. Don't ever leave me again, she cried. Never, never, never. I want to be with you. Always and forever until death do us part, he said. Daddy! Alex cried. Yeah, Daddy! Alex called, running to him. Alex, my little girl, he said, picking her up. I've missed you so much. Look how big you've gotten, he said in his baby voice. I missed you too, Daddy. Look what I made for you. She pulled out a necklace made of beads that spelled out, I love Daddy. Thank you. I'll wear it always, he said, kissing her. Alex put the necklace around him. Dolores' father walked up to him. Mr. Knight, I am sorry I caused you so much pain over the years, he started. Her father smiled. I love my daughter. All I want is for her to be happy. I've come to the conclusion that you are what makes her happy, he said, smiling. Come on, James, Dolores said, picking up his bag and taking his hand. Let's go home.